Video game sequels, something that everybody loves until they don't. But after making a good game, what else is a developer supposed to do? Well, how about a different game? And yet, once fans have their heart set on a sequel, they will never stop asking for it. Of course, when we do get a sequel to a game we love, it comes with certain expectations. We're not coming in with a fresh set of eyes. That sequel is going to need to deliver in a way similar to the original. I think the safest path to victory for any sequel is to just build off of what made the original so great. Sounds simple in concept, but in practice it's not always so easy to pull off. Game developers typically get my sympathy when it comes to trying to live up to such lofty expectations, but of course there are exceptions, like when they don't give a crap. There's a recipe for problems. One of the biggest dangers when it comes to sequels is that they can give us total garbage and get away with it because we're such suckers for the IP that we'll buy it regardless, and by the time we realize it's bad, they've already got our money. Strider 2, you son of a dingus. I always love it when some sequels are so bad that everybody just pretends it didn't exist when the next game in the series comes out. Oh, this is actually Strider 2? Really, the main thing a sequel needs to do for gamers to be accepting of it is the same thing any game needs to do, which is to do us all the courtesy of being good. It generally shouldn't be too hard to make at least some improvements over the original either. Even the best of games have their flaws, so what better opportunity to remedy those flaws than fix them in the sequel? Combine that with taking the things the game did well a step further and you've got yourself a hit. For example, the first Donkey Kong Country game was criticized for the way its secrets were handled. I never would have found some of them without the guide, a bit too cryptic perhaps. Donkey Kong Country 2 took care of that by making the secrets a lot more intuitive in a way where they would reward intelligent curiosity rather than just a blind guess and check. Of course, I can only imagine how much work went into the design of the platforming itself, and you pair that up with a clever, quirky title for the game, Diddy's Kong Quest, and what's there to complain about? Well, how about the sequel to that sequel, Donkey Kong Country 3? A fine game in its own right, but also a victim of its own series' success. It can be hard to know where to draw the line, and with each successive sequel, it's a bit of a risk since the series' reputation is being put up for scrutiny. I mean, you all know how gamers can be. Best way to avoid this? Just don't make any sequels. The ultimate example of quit while you're ahead. These game sequels can't be criticized because they don't exist. Now, so far we've just been assuming that any game that gets a sequel is based off a game that was a raging success. After all, if a game wasn't popular, it doesn't make as much sense to make a follow-up. There was a sequel to Pit Fighter that got canceled, and here's a list of everybody who was mad about it. That being said, sometimes games without a ton of prestige will get a sequel, and perhaps the best example would be Street Fighter 2. Now, the first Street Fighter wasn't as obscure as some people like to make it out to be, but it certainly pales in comparison to its sequel, both in terms of quality and popularity, not to mention kids yelling out the names of moves as they recreated some of the attacks. Just ask my 1995 neighbor's plants that were the victims of some tiger uppercuts from my cousin and I. And you know what? The neighbors may not have caught us had we not been screaming tiger uppercut as we did it. What's interesting about Street Fighter is that it was laying the groundwork for a genre, being the one-on-one fighting game genre. Considering Street Fighter 2 still holds up today as highly playable, it's pretty remarkable just how much ground they covered from Street Fighter 1. Now, while Street Fighter 2 didn't have to deal with high expectations from fans when it first came out, most sequels are not afforded that kind of luxury. When it comes to expectations and sequels, perhaps there's no better example than the Mario trilogy on NES. The first game, Super Mario Bros. 1, is famously one of the most influential video games ever made. The second game, Super Mario Bros. 2, is famously not actually Super Mario Bros. 2, but instead a reskinned version of a game called Doki Doki Panic. And Super Mario Bros. 3 is famously considered one of the best 2D platformers ever made. Mario 3 pretty much had everything going for it to be a successful sequel. A return to form, a feature-length commercial disguised as a family movie, and not only did it build off the original formula, it went totally wild with it in all the best ways. And it's not that people necessarily disliked the US version of Super Mario Bros. 2, it has its fans alright, but Mario 3 was what so many eager gamers were waiting for, and most people will even tell you that Super Mario Bros. 3 was better than the original. However, sometimes it's a bit of a coin toss which game people prefer between the original and the sequel. I think the Power Stone games are a good example of this. Capcom took Power Stone 1, kind of a wacky and frantic game by design, and said, hey, let's make it even more wacky and frantic. We can add more players, more stuff to interact with, and even have the stages change as the match progresses. But sometimes people just prefer the more straightforward approach of the original game. And yet, certain sequels will add something in that just feels so integral that it will make the original feel like it's missing something. For example, the Spin Dash in Sonic was introduced in Sonic 2, and a lot of people will be at a complete loss when they go back to Sonic 1 and realize it's not there. Like going back to a time when toilet paper didn't exist. I mean, some people nowadays think toilet paper is even more important than food. How did we ever survive without it? The Spin Dash in Sonic feels so inherent that Sega even added it as an option for Sonic 1 in later ports of the game. Something else I've noticed is that people can get confused on what exactly it means to be a sequel. Sometimes the next game in a series is simply that, the next game in the series. I think Mario Kart and Super Smash Bros. Are good examples of this. These games are more like taking a new stab at the same thing, but on a different console. A bunch of Mario characters racing against each other in Mario Kart, and a bunch of Nintendo and then some characters beating the heck out of each other in Smash Bros. Plus, sometimes a series will go in a different direction, such as the Prime series denoting a new direction for Metroid. Overall, I think despite gamers having a love-hate relationship with sequels, there's still more love than hate. After all, some of the best video games ever made are sequels. It just comes down to what the intentions are. Are the creators actually trying to build a legacy of greatness, or just looking for a quick cash grab? It all depends, and I'm sure that a lot of you watching have opinions when it comes to some of your favorite game franchises. Which is why for this video's question, I want to ask you what some of your favorite sequels are, and perhaps even more fun, what some of your least favorite sequels are. For me, I'd probably say Streets of Rage 2 for favorite sequel, and Pikmin 2 for least favorite. People love that game, but for me it just ruined the time management aspect that I liked so much in the first game. Alright, so with that, leave your comments down below, and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the Retro Bird, yeah, and he's talking about me.